Welcome everyone to this session of Speaking with Intent. Now, most of you would have heard the magical word abracadabra, right? But do you know that it has a Hebrew origin which translates to I create as I speak. As mystical as it sounds, it is possible to create as we speak. And the key to do that is to speak with intent and purpose. Fellow Toastmasters, our speaker today is here to talk about how we can make this magic happen. He's from Wisconsin and has grown up in our very own Silicon Valley, Santa Clara. He's a professional speaker and coach right now. He brings a wealth of knowledge integrating mindfulness, diversity, inclusion, and belonging to the forefront of professional development. His studies are inspired by his years of teaching as Aikido Sensei, the Japanese art of living in harmony. Our speaker today is open to questions during the speech. So please feel free to post them on the chat to me or everyone, and I would be happy to forward them to Michael. So please help me welcome Toastmasters Michael Chojnacki to share unique insights on how our presence is an expression of our intention. Michael.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. What was your intention? Your intention was to be here and show up, and Shazam, you are here. What a beautiful introduction. I didn't know that about abracadabra, speaking into our reality into existence, which is something we actually do quite often. And what we have to remember is that every communication we have is an exchange of energy. So we have to look at the quality of energy we place behind what we say. And what is the intention of our energy? We might be saying one thing, did you like that dessert? I made it especially for you. And you might be thinking, yes. And inwardly you might be thinking, no, I didn't really enjoy that dessert, but I feel socially I should say yes. So we need to make sure we're not sending mixed messages when we speak. And who do we speak to most? Ourselves. When we speak with intent, especially as Toastmasters, we have to consider, even before we write a speech, are we speaking for the benefit of ourselves or others? Now, because my background is in Aikido, the way of harmony, I means harmony, ki, spirit, and do, the way. So the way to harmony with spirit is truly about focusing on speaking for the betterment of others. And when we do that, we start thinking that way. How can I best serve others in my life, in my work, at home, people I see on the street, perhaps just share a smile? That might be a great deal of service to that other person and to us. All of these things that we do in life that might seem inconsequential or happenstance really help for us to focus our mind on creating with intent what we want in our lives. Actually, understanding intention begins with understanding what is the intention of the person listening to us. Sometimes we're blessed with family members that would rather just listen to themselves speak than listen to what we have to say. If that happens, or if that person happens to be a coworker, there's a way to align ourselves and help them develop better habits in how we respond to them. Socially, we might agree with someone because they're our elder or our senior person at work. But inwardly, if we disagree, we shouldn't be outwardly nodding yes, because that takes away from our intention and takes away of what we truly believe. So instead, when someone says something that we don't agree with, it's more important to remain neutral, to consider their perspective, appreciate it, and value that it's true to them, but it doesn't have to be true to us, because that's not our true intention in developing as we move along in life. So it's important to know when we listen and the quality of our listening so that we can develop our intention. When I listen to someone speak, I listen to the quality of their, you might say, spirit or intention behind what's being said. There are seven levels of intention and communication. So I break them down this way. The first level, of course, is the lowest level. Here, this intention is all about pleasing ourselves, pleasing the person that's speaking. I see other people as individuals, and I try hard to make sure they understand me. If we're not being heard, what does this person do? They usually turn up the volume and try to make their point clear. They don't usually change their approach. They just try to be more intense. It's the first or lowest level communication or communication and intention. The second level, our intention is focused on ourselves and others. We still see people as individuals separate from ourselves, but we're also focused on the importance of needing to be right, and we try to convince other people that we are right. At times we do agree with others, but we're most comfortable when people agree with us. So our intention here is understanding that people are important, but I'm a little more important because what I want is most important in life. The third level, we take a huge leap forward. Here our attention is on everyone working together. We understand the importance of community, and we try hard to be the peacemaker, to work with others, to help them to understand. We're willing to accept other people's ideas, and we support other people's ideas, knowing that working together is in the best interest of all. That's the third level. Fourth level, we take another huge leap forward, is the level of the heart. Here our attention is on the other person. We know our views are important, and we have our views, but we also honor that other people have different opinions. At the heart level, we choose to communicate in the spirit of compassion and love and understanding. Here it's more important for us to value the relationship than in being right. Here we practice seeing the best in others, because when we see the best in others, it helps us to see the best in ourselves. This is a very high level of intention where we communicate. The fifth level, another huge leap forward in our consciousness. We start to pay attention to the quality of consciousness we place behind our spoken words. We don't say things without thinking about or considering how they will affect others and ourselves. Actually, at this level, we realize that even our word choice is important. We might be writing a speech, we might be talking about something that happened to us, and rather than say, well, legally it was the right thing to do. Well, legal is one word, but we might switch to honesty. Honestly, that was the right thing to do. To communicate through honesty is a much higher level of consciousness than to say legally. Legally binds us in the realm of legal support, but honesty is a higher personal quality of consciousness. I think this is where most people are or want to be in Toastmasters. We speak with the intention to uplift others and help them discover their greater potential. We've discovered that our own words are powerful and that we truly do speak our reality into existence. Our intention here is to help people awaken to a higher level of awareness. The sixth level, another huge leap up. Our attention is focused on the spirit of communication. What is the purpose behind communication? Sometimes it's technical. We need to communicate technical information. But even then, the spirit of communication is we see people and want to awaken their higher qualities. We see that the voice is a spiritual expression, and we truly try to help people discover that as well. In the 1920s, there was an Italian opera singer, a soprano, Emilita Galigucci. And she discovered that she wanted to give so much more than just her voice to her audience. Her recordings sold in huge numbers all around the world. And what she did was she stood on stage, was she connected to the entire audience and held them with great love and compassion. But she also sang from here, the center of focus and concentration, and she communicated to the whole audience through that. It changed her understanding of what it means to give a performance and what it meant to connect to others on a much higher level. The seventh level, the highest level of communication, I don't know if we can describe this well, but we can attempt to. And that is, this goes far beyond our vocal communication. We see no sense of separation between ourselves and others. There is no difference between them and us. And here there is a harmonic unity that exists between all aspects of life. My wife taught me a very important lesson, my wife Maureen. We were walking in nature one day, and she was able to spot all of these things that were going on. I was more focused on the trail and the beauty of nature, but she could talk to me about all of these other things that were happening. I asked her, how does she do this? And she said, well, I don't see myself as walking along this trail or walking through nature. I see myself as part of nature. That is a huge shift in intention and perspective in what we are doing and where we are going. I was once at a high school and I was judging a senior project. I was one of 3 judges. And there was a young woman there that gave a very technical presentation. And then one of the judges asked, excuse me, one of the judges asked, what have you learned about tolerance? Or what has tolerance taught you? And she looked around and she said, I tried tolerance. It doesn't work. It's a very different level of understanding. Luckily, she was very young. It's time to grow into this. Tolerance is not acceptance. Tolerance is a sense of separation. It's pretty low on the scale of understanding our intuition and understanding where we are as we communicate. When we decide to speak with intention, thinking about the 7 levels or just thinking about our next presentation or maybe the meeting we have to speak at this afternoon, it's important to create the connection we desire before we speak. Now, we do this automatically. We walk into a room. In Japan, it's called reading the air. We have a sense of the energy or mood or emotion that is in the room between the people. And we create a connection before we speak. So if we create a connection of acceptance, we have a much easier time communicating our idea, our project, or troubles, and to have it accepted and welcome than if we choose our intention, or if our intention is wavering and we're focused more on, I wonder if they'll like me, or they probably won't like what I have to say, or this is bad news, or they've rejected my proposal before, they'll probably reject it again. That shifts the intention or shifts our expectations. But if we connect first with a calm sense of acceptance, then what happens is people are more relaxed and open to receiving what we have to say. One day I was at a business meeting and there was a gentleman seated at the far end of the table, and he wasn't the happiest person in the room, And people were not too happy with his point of view. So what did we do? Emotionally, we distanced ourselves from him because he kept coming on stronger and stronger with his same point over and over and over. So I knew I had to shift something. My intention was to shift the mood, move the meeting forward, and move everyone to a form of collaboration instead of conflict.
Michael, there is a question from Virginia.
Yes.
Virginia, you want to ask?
If you have one intention that you mean to convey, and you subconsciously convey something opposite to the person receiving it, what techniques can you use to defray that or recover after you've already said it and realize that the other person took it the wrong way?
Fantastic question. Because what happens when we express ourselves in one way, even with a good intention, we tend to then repeat the same tone or spirit in the message. So what we need to do is drop back and listen and consider the type of language or even word choice that the other person is using. If we can reflect the word choice or language that they're most comfortable with, they're more than likely to agree. But if we stay with our language or word choices here, say ours is more indirect and theirs is very direct, I need to change to a more direct tone, even though that might seem not nice to me or too abrasive. It's the way they're used to listening and hearing. My brother came over and visited, stopped by the house one day, I wasn't there, and had a conversation with my wife. And my brother tends to be quite direct, and my wife is not. Our family is not direct in their communication. So my wife, Maureen, she went ahead and matched him. She was direct, short sentences in her response to him. Our two children were sitting in the living room. After my brother left, they went, "Mom, we didn't know you would speak like that to anyone." And my brother called back and said, "That was one of the best conversations I had ever had," simply because she had matched his style, tone, intention, word choice. I think that relates to everything we do. What a brilliant question. Thank you. Dropping back to when I was in the meeting and in conflict with someone, what I did, I'll just finish this quick story so that I don't leave it hanging, is that when he was speaking with such intention, everyone was moving away, but I moved closer. And I stopped and I looked at him and I said, "I see how important this is to you." And then I paused. It was the first time anyone had acknowledged his point of view. His energy level dropped. We were able to move forward with much better results in that meeting. Did we have another question, Abhijit?
Yes. How do we grow into a higher intention level?
It starts every morning. As soon as I wake up in the morning, what's my first thought? I pay close attention to that. Is it something like, let's see, "Oh God, another day"? Or is it, "Oh God, another day"? What a difference in the way we communicate to ourselves. The brightness, the intention, the expectations. One is, "Oh no, 7 meetings in 6 hours? How did I get into this?" Or it's, "Wow, 7 meetings in 6 hours. I'm going to see what I can do to make each of those meetings efficient and straight to the point to free up my time." So we can view things either way, positive or negative. But how we move from one level to the other is really the story of my life. I used to just think about myself. I was very shy growing up, very introverted. I developed a great skill in observing other people, but I wasn't an active participant in life. No way. So what I did was I realized when I responded to people and made them laugh or did something to sincerely compliment them, they changed the way they responded to me. So this taught me how to see the best in others. even when they didn't see it in themselves. And because that became a habit, I started to see the best in myself and then put that on the forefront of moving forward. I started meditating about 20 years ago, and I was at a club officer training. I was the guest speaker at an evaluation contest. So I arrived early, made sure everyone knew that I was there. They didn't have to worry if the speaker was going to show up late. So I was there, and I looked at the division director, and she was there, and we hadn't met yet. And she kind of looked over at me, and she said, "You have such a radiance of peace all around you." And I was honestly embarrassed because I said, "You don't know the old Michael." And then we both laughed. But as people walked in, I just practiced seeing the best in them, no matter how they saw themselves. And that's how we moved to a higher level. In that same meeting, I gave my speech, and the room was an interesting shape in the cafeteria. It was quite wide and not as deep. So when I gave my speech, I walked over to one woman and I delivered a sentence or two of my speech to her. And then I worked the whole audience to connect and communicate to everyone with that same compassion, that same love and acceptance. I didn't know that the woman I first spoke to was going to be one of my evaluators in the contest. In her evaluation, she said, "Michael, you came over to me. We had an intimate conversation, and then you left me." That taught me a great lesson in make sure we connect to everyone in the audience and don't spend too much time with each person. So when we move from one person to the next in life, from meeting to meeting, driving down the road, wherever we go, make sure we're connecting to each person without judgment. Because if we drop off our judgments, we have more time to spend in the ever unfolding discovery of perfecting ourselves. Besides, if we judge people, there's no time to love them. We can either judge people or love them. Judging them creates conflict. Love creates opening and understanding. Did we have another question?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Even when we say hello, we can have a tremendous impact on shaping an entire relationship. I've only been hired, well, when I was working for other people, I went to 3 job interviews and I was hired 3 times. Now, maybe that's just me, I don't know, or I happened to show up at the right place when they needed me. But I have to say that in each time, I was well focused on what I wanted. I wanted them to hire me. And I knew that in my mind, I would serve them well. And I think it was because of my presence and because of when I said hello with great sincerity, that communicated more to them than anything else I could have said. Usually in an interview, we're nervous, we're worried. Will they accept me? Will they not accept me? But I think about how I can serve them, which takes the energy off of myself, and my intention becomes one of service, one of tremendous acceptance for whoever they are. I didn't know any of these people the first time I met them at all. In fact, the first job I applied for, the only reason I applied for it was because it was within walking distance from my house. That was it. I had no idea if I could do the job, but he hired me on the spot. I guess it was divine timing, but even saying hello. Now, both in Japan, they have kotodama, so the expression of vowels or sounds. In India, also the understanding of the sounds that we speak, the vowels, the sounds, the dynamic om, the sound in that. All of these sounds are reflected in our language. And when we focus and create a greater connection with our intention before we speak and connect to someone, we have a tremendous impact on creating a comfort zone for that person or for both of us to speak. one day I was walking down the street in Carmel, and I passed by an antique shop, and an elderly woman was standing in the doorway. I didn't know who she was, waiting to get into the shop. I had no idea, but she was the shopkeeper. And she was probably in her mid-80s or older. And she looked at me and she said, "Hello, could you help me?" And I said, "Yes." She says, "Well, I need a light bulb to be changed." Now, this wasn't as simple as it sounds. And I thought, okay, I'll change the light bulb. Well, I can't reach the light bulbs. They're in the back in the closet. My husband put them there. So I got down the light bulb. Where's the light that needs to be changed? Well, it's one that's way up there. Well, I had to go to the neighbor shop to borrow a ladder to walk through one art shop into the other one without damaging any antiques, change the light bulb. And finally, I asked her, I said, "Well, why did you pick me?" She said, "Well, you had a pleasant presence." I thought, wow, I had no idea that the radiance of character was expressed to people as I walked down the street. I thought that was more something we held within. But she asked me, and then I asked her, what's her background, or have you had this shop for long? And she went on to tell me the story. She was actually one of Mother Teresa's missionaries of charity in India. And she just said, "You were the right person to ask." She gave us a tour of the whole shop. Such tremendous stories she told me, but all through my presence, that whole event unfolded. So if we're applying for a job, attending a meeting, wanting to improve the quality of a relationship, all of these things are vital.
Michael, I have a question from Tom.
Yes.
How would you do if hostility already exists even before you start speaking or communicating with that person or group?
If hostility already exists before I start speaking, well, that's happened to me plenty of times. But if hostility or conflict exists before, I have to think about what role did I play in creating that tension or that hostility. What role have I played, and how do they see me? Do they see me as someone neutral? Maybe they see me as, oh, he's the peacemaker, he's too soft, he'll never get to the point. Or they see me as, he's the cause of this problem. So if I think that already exists, what I've learned to do is, outside of the meeting or even online meeting, I sit quiet, I calm my mind, and I speak to that person and tell them everything I would like to say, not in a pointed way, but in a most compassionate way. Because people often have different points of view, doesn't mean they're wrong, they're just coming about the idea from a different direction. That's like one team that I worked with. Everyone had a different idea. Each engineer had a different idea of the right way that this project should be handled. Each one. And what I did, I was brought in to listen and realized that all of them were headed to the same endpoint. It was simply a different process on how to get there. So by explaining what the hardware engineers needed, what the software engineers needed, what the scientists needed, it mostly came down to understanding, guess what? Their terms and deadlines. And when they understood that, the tension went away and they went, oh, if that's what you need, that makes our job simpler. Oh, well, if I would have known that, I could meet that deadline, no problem. So it's understanding. So if there's conflict that exists, I've learned to also, through acceptance of others, learn to look past the conflict. So many times when we see or anticipate a conflict, guess what? Even in our language, I see the conflict more than the person. So I ask myself, is it the person or the problem? Oh, it's the person. Well, then we can work on the problem. If I get over the conflict in personality, I can work with the technical aspect, let's say. That's probably a long answer, but it's the process that I go through. And the key is people think, wow, I have to try to be compassionate toward that one person. For me, I think that's too big of a jump. I try to be compassionate to everyone. And then when I think about someone when there's a problem, it's much easier for me to naturally respond with compassion because that's who I am. That's who I'm becoming and trying to move up. If I find I can't love someone or be loving, I ask myself, why not? And honestly, that usually has something to do with my own self-acceptance. Here's a question. How many people have ever been given a compliment and you've responded with, oh, no, I would have done that for anyone. Sometimes people used to say, Michael, that's so nice of you. Oh no, I would have done that for anyone. If it's hard for us to accept a compliment, it's hard for us to accept those positive qualities of ourselves. Or even giving a compliment. Some people you can give a wonderful compliment to. Thank you so much for what you did. I truly appreciate it. And again, they resist. So there's a reason there. And what I've learned in that case is don't compliment them in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable, because then our intention is not accepted, it's resistance. There was a study in Geneva that showed that emotions can be heard through the voice. And we know that. We know when someone's in a happy mood or sad mood. But in this study, I had no idea that our human ear can hear 1,400 different pitches and 280 different levels of volume in each pitch, assuming we have healthy hearing. And we know that someone will pick it up no matter how we disguise it. How are you doing today? Okay. Well, maybe that's not so okay. How are you doing today? Great. It's a much different. How are you doing today? I'm doing great. One person, Jim, he told me, he said, Michael, never say okay. He said, say fantastic. That wasn't a natural word for me to use. But Jim's had more experience in life than I have, so I paid attention to him. And I started answering, sometimes when it felt right, fantastic. And it did change the radiance of my character. It's still not a word I go to all the time, but trying someone else's technique for how I respond was a good mirror of how I actually felt. So we can hear through the human ear, but what about intention? Can we hear another person's intention in their voice in relation to emotions? Or is there something else going on? In the mind, there's been a couple studies. First was revealed by New York researchers that infants as young as 6 months old can understand our emotions and intentions and respond to them. Now they put some of these infants in an MRI and you could track the neurons of the intention. There was more activity as being very important and guiding our social interactions, especially in the survival mode and keeping safe, which is very, very strong in all human beings. Now, public speaking often feels like a solo act, but let me tell you, it's not. It's not about the speaker. It's always about the audience. When we have been given the gift to stand in front of an audience, even if it's one person, we're communicating to improve the quality of their life or to give them something that can help them. If we're standing in front of them telling them what to do, they lose interest very fast because they know our intention is not true. Now, if we're seeking to persuade others, inform others, or entertain, all of those have a little different quality of intention. But if we truly want to communicate something about others, we communicate on what is important to them. To frame, even if we were speaking about a challenge or conflict we had with someone, I would phrase it in a manner or language that was important to them. They're talking about the problem. Great. I would clarify the problem and let them know that I understood the problem. The problem was in not enough clarity and communication, let's say, or you're not as forthcoming as I would like you to be. Great. Let them know that you understand that. And here's what I can do to help that. And here's also a couple tips that, well, when I'm trying to express myself and you look away or walk away, it makes me feel like I'm not valued. And they might think, oh, I never realized that. So you have to communicate both sides. What you can do, understand the problem, what you can do, ask them what they can do, and then work toward a goal together. And that way it's much easier to overcome conflict. The other thing I do when someone has a conflict is I let them know that that conflict is very real to them. I understand how important this is to you. And then what can we do to move forward is vital. Some of the daily habits we have that weaken our ability to communicate with intention, we all know them, but we use them unconsciously. Gossip, lying, bragging, jealousy, greed, all the lower energies, lower emotions. Now, I used to be jealous of people that were more successful than me, and it was a challenge for me to truly become happy and enthusiastic about other people's success. And guess what? I'm always enthusiastic about other people's success. Was a shift in me, helping me to move higher to the higher levels of understanding and intention. Daily habits that strengthen our ability to communicate our intention: being truthful, humble, nonviolence in both thought and action, and the right use of our energy. Where are we putting our energy? I don't like the way that person did that. It's very different than, oh, that might not be my choice, but it could be their choice. Cleanliness is important, to be clean, cleaning out the mind. We go to sleep every night. We get a chance to clear our consciousness. It's wonderful. And then surrendering to what lies in front of us. A lot of times people say, table topics, not that important. I had someone answer a table topics question like this. I asked them, what's important in your life? And he looked around and he said, to take care of the things that lie right before me. It's like, wow, okay, that is quite an answer from a simple question. Very profound. That was over 20 years ago. I still think about that. What's important to you in your intention? Why is the direction of your intention important? Is it about ourselves? Is it about others? Do we see life as a community or as an individual? Well, there are certain things that I do that I feel are more impactful upon myself, but I realize that even the things that I think only affect me affect everyone.
Michael,
Yes,
we have a question.
yes.
How do you react with people who are not able to move forward away from conflict?
How do we react to people that are not willing to move away from conflict? I move myself away first. I've learned that if I make the change within myself, it lessens their intensity. They might not be able to let go. Maybe not at this point in their life. Maybe in years to come they will. But they will not be able to let go. I had someone that was very angry at me. I mean, if you look up the definition of the word livid, that defined this person, that defined her. Her energy was totally focused on me. And it was the most intense energy I felt. She sat next to me once and I could feel like the heat of rage coming off her body directed at me and everyone else in the room. So she couldn't let go, but I could shift the way I thought about her. And when I did, her energy, her intensity dropped and was diminished. Now, her energy was so intense that I had to remind myself not to tie into it. Because as a human being, if someone argues at us, we want to respond with conflict. It's so often we tend to reflect it. It's very hard for us to stay centered and neutral when someone's angry. But what I did was I had a book that I was reading at the time, and the name of the book is Holy Science by Sri Yukteswar. And I kept that book with me. And sometimes I even took it to meetings with me, so I could just look at his picture and remember there is so much more beyond this one conflict, this one intention. And that helped me shift my mind and keep it focused on the bigger picture. Plus, internally, when someone's angry at us, or if someone can't let go of their anger, I try to find out what would help them to release their anger. Not, that doesn't mean yelling and shouting, but just to kind of get over it. Because they might be angry, but it might be about something completely different. Yet another question?
Michael, just what's the name of the book again?
Holy Science,
Holy Science.
Sri Yukteswar. Very technical in the beginning of the book, but he describes the levels of the heart, the levels every human being goes through to understand where they are and how they relate to the world and to the universe. A wonderful book that helped me. And books are very personal, I will say that. Sometimes I have recommended books to people and then they never speak to me again. For me, I have learned that I can pick up most any book and look at the universal truths in it. And then that speaks to me. So my reading library is quite eclectic, you might say. So is my musical taste. In our family, we listen to music. Our kids chose the songs we listen to every night. We listen to songs from, you could say, countries or languages, over 20 different languages every night. Now, I will not claim to know what they're saying in these songs, but I am impressed by the rhythm, the heart, the intention of love in this music from countries all over the world, even Icelandic music. Now we have to come back and realize that our habits of intention are both spoken and unspoken. So our intention might go in one direction, be unspoken, but then be verbalized. So I try to verbalize the higher qualities and understand who we are to other people, friends, family, people we drive down the street. When we drive. My wife and I were driving a few months ago, and a gentleman on a motorcycle was on one lane, went around us, cut in front of us, and then off the exit. Now, most people might have a little bit of something to say about them. I put my hand out and I said, "May you arrive in peace." And my wife looked at me and started laughing. She says, "Well, that's how you swear." So how we respond to the events of our life is a good reflection of how we think.
So I have another question, Michael.
Yes.
What should we do if our intentions get misunderstood?
Again, that's perception. If our intentions are misunderstood, then I think to myself, being married for 40 years, I've been misunderstood plenty of times. And if I misunderstood, then what I do, in fact, this happened last night. And I was going to prepare for this presentation in one part of the house. And I decided, well, I'll prepare someplace else. And my wife said, well, I didn't mean to be so blunt and say that you should prepare over here. I just gave that as an idea. And she goes, but it seems like your intention was like, oh, you were very unhappy. And it's like, no, I wasn't unhappy. I was just a little stressed about something else that happened, and that carried through to my voice. So if our intention is misunderstood, I like to drop my the intention or the intent of the quality of my voice, a little more sincere, a little softer, more caring, instead of being so direct. There are times in my life I've been accused of being far too direct. So I've had to grow through that balance of understanding when it's okay to be direct for some people, when it's better to be neutral or have a softer approach. But I always look to how the other person is responding to my presence, even when I'm not speaking, and then when I speak. If they're accepting, they'll move closer. If they're not accepting, they'll distance themselves. All of that has to do with learning how to read the intent of the person you're speaking with or the audience. All of that is related.
Okay, I have another question from me.
Yes.
In America, most people appear in a rat race, whether they like or not. How do you avoid the trap and celebrate the success of your competitors? The desire to bury your competitor is so strong in the country that when your families and friends are divided according to political affiliations.
Wow, what a question, huh? Well, you realize that that's where they're coming from. There are people in my family that have opposing views to what I believe in the larger family, cousins and such. And what I do is I still honor them and realize it's their point of view. Now, if someone is focused on something that I think is not good for the environment or not very compassionate or truthful, I realize that reflects their level of understanding or development. I don't shame them or argue them. In fact, I make sure I compliment them when they are saying or doing something that I see as positive. So instead of conflict this way, I move with them when it's positive and ignore them when it's not positive.
I have another one from
Yes.
Richa.
Yes. Oh.
When nervousness in one's voice as a speaker come across as the wrong intention, and how do we address that?
Was it the quality of someone's voice?
Nervousness.
Oh, nervousness. Oh,
Yes,
that's
sir.
wonderful. How many of you think I'm nervous right now? Not too much. Nervousness is energy. I had a great psychologist tell me this once. And she said, Michael, if people are nervous, the audience almost never sees it because it comes out as an expression. Even if you see the speaker trembling, they're trembling a little bit of their hands or something, or voice quivering, the audience, especially Toastmasters, we don't care. We look past that. We want to know the heart of the message. And inwardly, we're cheering that person on. I know when I listen to a speaker, they're doing great, they're not doing great, there's someplace in between. I'm silently cheering them on that everything's going to go well for them. Everything's going to be great in their presentation. And that helps reduce the tension. But it doesn't come through, not much.
She's saying thanks. I have another question from Tom. Michael, do you feel it's more challenging now that we are meeting virtually? It may get harder to let people know your sincerity by just hearing you and not by observing your body language. It may take you more efforts to convince people around you about your nice intentions and to help them understand. Do you feel it's more challenging?
It is more challenging, but there's something we can do that we can practice in our Toastmaster meetings, and that is showing up a little early. And when someone logs in, hi, oh, it's great to see you. Or after the meeting, say a guest attends a meeting, we'd love to have more members in our club. And then usually the president says, What did you enjoy best about our meeting? They close, people log off. We never hear from them again. So what we can do is make sure there's just a few people to speak about, or join a few people in a breakout room and then lean in. I did this at the last couple of meetings I've had. The meeting was over and then I lean in and go, wow, wasn't that great? It's so nice to see you again. And let them know. So in our choice of words, not to be too lengthy, but to be short. And again, our intention, here's the key, just as if they were in the room a few feet from us. Have that same feeling. Don't feel like, oh, they're far away, or oh, they're another world away. One woman told me, she goes, well, my manager's in Singapore, I'm in Santa Clara Valley, and my other team members in the UK. We never get together. But it was a small enough team that they would allow some time just to relax. And here's the key. When someone's speaking, whatever they say, accept it. So if you're accepting it, they'll relax more and they'll honor how accepting you are, which will help to develop the communication, the language, the relationship, and you can make a better personal connection. But it comes back to understanding how we feel when we're in person with someone. We still see people in person, our families, friends, and such. We can still practice connecting with them even before we speak.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
So I have another question.
Okay.
Timothy is talking about, like, you talk a lot about understanding where others are coming from, which is all well and good, but his concern is that one of the surest ways that he gets annoyed is to tell him that what he's thinking. So he abhors mind readers. He will tell you what he's thinking, but then you don't tell him. So how do you see where others are coming from without being patronizing and coming across as a know-it-all?
We soften our approach. That's the key. We start, it's just like meeting someone for the first time. When you meet someone for the first time, we're general in our comments. So when we start this meeting today, how did we start? You were one of the first people to log on. So we started with, hello, how are you? Just general, what have you been thinking? And if I say that to someone, what have you been thinking? And they say, well, I'm really working on this project. I've got a tight deadline. And then I acknowledge, wow, that's great. I know you'll do a great job. I know you'll hit the deadline. If someone asks me, what am I thinking? I don't think, well, I really don't like the way he dressed today. That's being judgmental. So instead, I start with a softer view of what have I been thinking? I've been thinking about the importance of relationships, just something very open to lead the conversation until it can be more direct or specific. But we do get into trouble when we jump straight into, what have you been thinking? Why are you late? Whoa, that's just too much, that's too pointed. So I think about the importance of everyone getting along. Okay. Yeah, it's great when people show up on time.
Thank you. So we have a personal question for you, which is, what are your anger trigger points? Like, how did you manage or divert the energy from, suppose, say, talking about road rage, and how you converted that to a blessing?
That's unfolded in the last 10 to 20 years. And I realized that I could be angry. In fact, I was giving a presentation about something that happened to me. And for what those people did to you, a woman stood up at the end. For what those people did to you, you have every right to be angry as you can, and let them know what you think. And I stood up and I was standing in front of the audience and I said, well, I tried anger. There just wasn't a very bright future. So I realized anger was only poisoning myself. So instead of the road rage and everything, I would focus on what I could do to help the situation. Now, in Aikido, which was a real shift for me in teaching that both online now, but it's a martial art of living in harmony or in the spirit of harmony, that if anger, whether it's physical or it could be verbal or energetic coming toward us, we welcome it, but we don't absorb it. We welcome it and we let it go. So I don't try to stop it. I welcome and let it go. And when I let it go, I realize it's only energy. There was a software engineer, I was speaking on the East Coast, and he said he was new and he thought, I have to listen to every word. He was a software engineer. I have to listen to every word my manager says. And his manager sat kind of beside him, a little off to the side. And unfortunately for him, his manager was a toxic employee. So he's working very hard trying to do his job, but he feels like he should listen. He doesn't know what to do. And he says, I wake up at night, I don't, like the manager's standing over my bed yelling at me. And I can't sleep, I can't work, I'm gonna get fired. I goes, Michael, what can I do? And I said, well, when he says something that doesn't pertain to work, if it's just news, politics, his ideas of philosophy, I said, realize that energy can go past you and into the recycle basket by your foot. And he looked at me like, you're from California, huh? I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, I'll try it. So the manager would say something and it would come to him, but he wouldn't absorb it. He would just press his foot on the recycle can. And 2 weeks later, he called me up, Michael, I can't believe how this has changed my life. I take the energy of those thoughts and just realize they need to be recycled. It's just energy and I can let it go. But when I do have to listen, I listen very sincerely.
Next question is from Chojnacki, and she is asking, how to control your anger when someone lay their assumptions on you or they are putting allegations. So in other words, how do you put your boundaries being calm?
Yeah, sometimes people yell at us. Oftentimes people yell at us because they're angry at themselves. There was once a woman, she came up to me after a presentation. I didn't even know she was in my presentation, but she walked up to me, tears running down her face, and she didn't even say hello. She said, my boss yelled at me and blamed me, even though my work was perfect. What did I do wrong? And I thought, oh my. I said, well, where did your manager come from? She goes, well, he came from one of those meetings behind the glass where when they were talking, you could feel the glass vibrating. I said, yeah, I know about those meetings. And I said, don't take it personally. You just happened to be the next person he saw. So he just dumped all his anger and frustration onto her. She said her software was perfect. I believed her. It was. She just happened to be the next person he saw. And remember, this took me a long time to realize, when people are yelling or blaming or, Michael, you're too late, or you're whatever, you're too tall, or whatever they're talking to me about, the problem there is a reflection of how they think in their own mind. What have they heard from their parents, from their brothers and sisters? What have they heard? It's the only way they know often of expressing themselves. I know a woman who grew up in a family with a very powerful or dominating mother and aunt. And it affected this woman's language and outview on life. Nothing was ever clean enough. Nothing was ever straight enough. Nothing was ever cooked right. And that's the way she spoke to her children. So you could see it move through the generations. It had nothing to do with them. It was just the habit of thinking that we're taught. So what I've learned to do is change my way of thinking. My trigger points, I end up being angry at myself, which is not good. Michael, why haven't you made that change yet? I have to think about that and then move forward. But the more I've learned to appreciate others, the less angry I become. The more I've learned to see the best in others, the more I've learned to see the best in myself. Now, I'm not the type of person that says, wow, Michael, you did a great job. That's just not me. I feel inside, I'm satisfied when I think, okay, I did a great job. I helped them. But when people tell me, wow, what you said changed my life, I remember those points. And that helps me to distance myself from anger or self-doubt or judgment and move toward what I can do.
Okay, thank you. So next question we have is from Vanita, how to deal with bullies? Like, wouldn't changing voice to be softer, calmer tone make the bully think that they won, and next time they can come back on you even stronger? Uh, like asking, keeping school kids in mind. How do we groom them?
School kids, wow. Earlier I mentioned I lived for 7 years in Milwaukee, 7 years in Exeter, and then 7 years in Santa Clara where I went to high school. And changing schools, people picked on me. 14 years old, I was the new kid in school, and bullies were pretty intense. You know how interesting or pointed high school students can be. And they made fun of me. The way I looked different, I dressed differently, everything was different. And then they said, you're crazy, which is an insult to them. And I looked at them and I said, yeah. And then they looked at me like, you're not supposed to agree, you're supposed to disagree. So by accepting what they said, in a few days, I went from being the oddball to, he's pretty cool. A bully is looking to attack someone else to make themselves feel better. There's a story of two girls, quite young, probably 10, 11 years old. And the younger girl, I think the 10-year-old, she was quite petite for her age. And there was a bully and her friend. And the bully would always pick on her friend. The bully would always pick on her friend. And the younger girl, she would meditate often every day. And she had a great sense of peace. And one day, right in the middle of the attack, when the bully was picking on her friend, she stepped in and she looked at the bully and said, why don't you pick on me instead? Because I know who I am and you don't. That was a powerful story for me. She had that sense of who she is and that she could not take it personally. A bully is always looking to tease you and elicit a negative response. And if we stay neutral, eventually they walk away. They get tired, they're not getting the response they want. But as soon as we try to fight with them or give them conflict, they just escalate, they continue to escalate. So if we stay neutral and say, you know, you're crazy. Yeah, guess I am sometimes. There's nothing to fight with. That's what worked for me.
Do we have any more questions? Okay, I'll take this up now.
Okay.
Michael, do you want to finish your talk with something?
Yes, I'll wrap this up. I ask people often, when does your next speech begin? And they look at me and they think, well, I'm not scheduled, or a few weeks, or, you know, I'm working on one, I don't really like it. But I tell them, your next speech begins right now. Because the qualities of your thought and your action is shaping your presence and intention in front of the audience. What you're thinking right now, how you interact with the next person you see, shapes how people see you in front of the audience. Now, I know that sounds idealistic, but one day, Michael was not in a very good mood. and I was going shopping. And I went to the grocery store, I bought the things I had to buy. Usually I interact with the cashier or the checker, whoever it is, and I compliment them. But today Michael was quiet. And I was just about ready to pay for everything. The transaction was going through. And this woman looked at me and she said, "You're the nicest customer I've had all day." And I thought, me? I'm not in a very good mood. But I realized at that moment that who we are most of the time, how we are normally expressing ourselves on those 7 levels, that's who we truly are. We may waver a little bit. We might be impatient with ourselves or others. We might think thoughts that are not that positive at times. But people tune into the character or the radiance that we are most of the time. And that's what comes through. That's what will come through in your next speech. That's what comes through as you write your speech because of your desire to help others.
Thank you so much, Michael. Can we all unmute ourselves and applaud for that wonderful speech, enriched with a lot of personal experiences?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amazing.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Oh, thank you. I even got credit for this speech.
I could feel some vibrations like what you were transmitting, and I could feel calmer just by listening to your speech.
Thank you. And that's key. That is key. People respond to how we feel, to what we project. Most of our communication is intuitive anyway.
So I think Ming has a question, quick question. I don't know if that will take too long, but can you repeat what are the 7 levels?
Oh, the 7 levels. Let me find that very quickly so I make sure I do it easy, the easy way and the clear way. The first level is all about ourselves. Life is about me and what I want in life. I'm speaking so that people will listen to me and respect me. First level, lowest level. Second level, our intention is focused on ourselves and others, but really, you know what? I'm a little more important than most people. We're bridging the gap, but I really like it when people agree with it, agree with me. Third level, we're the peacemaker. We know everyone can work together and we can overcome these problems. And we honor people's ideas. That's the key in the third one. We really want to work together. The fourth level is the heart. Our views are important to us and others, but love and compassion is more important. We know it's more important to communicate in the spirit of compassion and acceptance. And we help people see the best in themselves, which helps us, of course, to see the best in ourselves. Fifth level, understanding the quality of consciousness we place behind our spoken words. The person that answered, just listening to you made me feel more peaceful. That comes from myself spending time in silence. Then I have that to offer. And my focus is on the desire to uplift others. The sixth level, the spirit of communication, the consciousness in which we communicate, the opera singer I mentioned, Emilita Gallicucci, she's the one that really gave her singing and voice both vocal and spiritual expression. And the seventh level, there's no difference between anyone. Yourself and the other person are identical. You're the same. It's just the social mask we wear or where we grew up. That's the only difference. And yet, guess what? Most of that is imagined.
Thank you so much. So we have few good comments from everybody. Thank you so much for the great session. I can't wait to tackle my next speech project. Thank you, Michael. Truly helpful session. You demonstrated what the 7th level communication feels like. So again, on behalf of everybody listening, thank you, Michael, for taking out time and sharing those wonderful experiences and stories with us.